Welcome to Daily Living, where we cruise through the Catholic liturgy of the Word, trying to dig out the deeper meanings of Scripture and how they might apply into our daily living. Yes, my friend, that is what we do. We're asking questions like, hey, what do these Gospels have to do with me? How can I take these Gospels and apply them into my daily living so that I can become a reflection of God's love to this world that doesn't know God and certainly is in deep need of more love, don't you think? I mean, take a look around. There's a lot of bad news out there. How can I take the good news, apply it into my daily living so that I can become a light in that darkness? I want to be a tool in the hand of God, making present His kingdom. Not someday, but today and every day, and that's what this show's all about. And I'm so glad that you could join us today. Got a great show here on the 5th Sunday of Lent. You know, about 6 months ago, I was at a football game, WVU, and I was sitting in a box. And so there's like the beautiful people, right? So I'm sitting next to this guy, I don't know him, and he's talking about this restaurant that he's opening up in a local town that's close to me in Lewisburg. And so I'm listening to him talk about his restaurant, and we're talking about the different things, and I said, you really should get a piano in there, and he was talking about how he's got this signature burger that he thinks is going to do really well, and he's describing cheddar, he's describing sauteed onions, I think there was some bacon on there, and some barbecue sauce, and when he said barbecue sauce, I said, barbecue sauce? Who would ever put barbecue sauce on a hamburger? Right? You know, because that's how I feel. Well, it wasn't the right thing to say. Do you ever just kind of really wish, you know, the swiftest horse will not retrieve the spoken word, because he didn't like that. I could tell he was upset. Well, he said, well, maybe you should try it sometime before you judge it. I was like, okay, I'm sorry, whatever. So anyway, this week I went into that restaurant for the first time ever. And I walked in, first of all, they're playing Peaceful Easy Feeling by the Eagles on the jukebox, which I love, okay? The seat was really comfortable. The setting was all very nice. And I thought, wow, this is a really nice restaurant. So anyway, the waitress comes in, she brings me the menu, and I look, and there it is, man, the classic burger that he's talking about. And I'm looking, and it's got barbecue sauce on it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to order it. So I ordered it, and she said, do you want fries or chips with that? And I'm like, well, I'll have chips. She's like, well, what kind of chips? I'm like, what kind of chips? Oh, yeah, they got 12 different flavors of chips. So I'm like, bring me the list. And I just looked quickly, and I said, dill and assaggio pepper. It was amazing. Anyway, so I get the hamburger, well done. You know, I like my meat medium well, but with hamburgers, let's just cook it, because you don't know. It was amazing. I mean, the barbecue sauce was perfect. It was the best burger I've had maybe ever. And it just goes to show, you know, we're so quick to judge, aren't we? I mean, I know I am. I've got my box, you know, my box of understanding, and barbecue sauce on a hamburger is outside of that box, right? Okay? And well, now it's inside, right? Because I opened up my mind to the possibility that maybe I'm wrong, okay? Honestly, I just ordered it because I felt so bad about what I said 6 months later. But I texted that guy and I told him, I said, I was wrong. I was wrong. That barbecue sauce, it deserves to be on the burger. And thank you very much for providing such a wonderful service. But what does that have to do with our show? Nothing, okay? So what do you say? I quit yipping about it, and we get right on in. We are hearing from the Gospel of John. I love John, and I love this Gospel. Jesus went to the Mount of Olives, but early in the morning he arrived again in the temple area, and all the people started coming to him, and he sat down and he taught them. Then the scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery and made her stand in the middle. They said to him, Teacher, this woman was caught in the very act of committing adultery. Now the law, Moses, commands us to stone such women. So what do you say? They said this to test him so they could have some charge to bring against him. Jesus bent down and began to write on the ground with his finger. But when they continued asking him, he straightened up and he said, Let the one among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her. And bent down and wrote on the ground. In response, they went away one by one, beginning with the elders. So he was left alone with the woman before him. Then Jesus straightened up and said to her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" She replied, "No, sir, no one." Then Jesus said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go, and from now on, do not sin anymore." That's our gospel, and what a gospel it is. This is Daily Living. I'm Father Chapin. You stick around. We'll be right back, and we're going to talk about this gospel and maybe a few other things along the way here as we celebrate the 5th Sunday in Lent. Hi, this is Father Chapin, host of Daily Living with Father Chapin. Every once in a while I get stopped in the grocery store, or on the street, or somewhere in public, and a complete stranger will come up to me and say, "You know what, I watch you each and every week. Don't go to church, but I watch you." And I'm thinking, wow, is that amazing? But you know, the only reason I'm reaching that person is through media, and media is very expensive. And if you'd like to help me with this ministry, I'd like you to prayerfully consider a contribution to Daily Living at 325 West Main Street, White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, 24986. And together, we can bring a little light into this very, very dark world.
Thank you for watching Daily Living with Father Chapin. To help support this television ministry, please send your tax-deductible donations to Daily Living, 325 West Main Street, White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, 24986.
Welcome back to Daily Living. So, when you're confronted with the truth and you don't like it, you really only got 4 choices. Number 1, which is by far the most popular choice, is to ignore the truth. We call this turning a blind eye, which is actually a very nice way of describing it, because there's a truth and I'm going to turn a blind eye, pretend it's not there. A tragic example would be found in the cases of both child and spousal abuse, which are epidemic in this country. In fact, did you know that in West Virginia, our state, has the highest rate of spousal abuse ending in domestic homicide in the country? Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. And when I think about all those tragic cases, I'm thinking, how many people, you know, they knew. They knew something was up. Maybe they couldn't put their finger on it exactly, but maybe it was a neighbor or relative. They knew something deep down inside was not right? All the while, they pretend that it's not there. They turn a blind eye. It's not my business, which is an awful excuse. But anyway, that's the first thing we can do. The second thing we can do when we're confronted with a truth that we don't like is that we can kill the messenger. And boy, I've certainly been the recipient of that one, and I guess it's natural. I mean, haven't we all had the case or a situation or the experience where we're thinking to ourselves, well, who are you? Who are you to tell me that? Like somehow the truth depends on the credibility of the messenger. Now, the third thing we can do with truth that we don't like is manipulate. As truth becomes elastic, we can kind of bend it a little bit, maybe move around a few facts here and there to fit our agenda. You can see this on your television set every Sunday morning, okay? But then oftentimes manipulation, more commonly, is more subtle, because one can soften the truth, kind of dumb it down. And after a while, the truth doesn't really resemble the truth at all. Then finally, the fourth and least popular reaction that we can have when we're faced with the truth that we don't like is we can swallow it whole. And it might not taste too good going down, but it will change you. A good dose of truth will often change your outlook on the way you look at life and everything. And the one thing I know about truth is it's always a good thing, right? Because it's God's will that we live in the truth. And in the end, it's that truth that will lead us home. The scribes and the Pharisees brought to Jesus a woman who had been caught in adultery and made her stand in the middle. So, I mean, where to even start? Let's start with a term called situational ethic, all right? That's the idea that truth is based on, well, the circumstance. Out of situational ethic comes what is known as a necessary evil, or a white lie, the idea of lying for the greater good. Now, the problem with this is that it leads one out of the land of black and white, absolute truth, and into the land of shades of gray, where absolute truth no longer exists. The landscape morphs into shades of gray. Some call this the USA, right? Where we have produced lawyers that have perfected the art of your truth is just as good as my lie if you can't prove that I'm lying. Okay, again, that gets back to the manipulation we were talking about before. For the right price, you can twist just about any black or white into gray. Now, let's get back to this. Jesus says, let the one among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone. What does that really mean? I think through the centuries, often we've been tempted to think, well, you know, Jesus is completely tolerant of our sin. Obviously, he's let this woman go without any consequences of her sin. So maybe it's kind of a carpe diem thing, you know, live and let live, seize the day, right? Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. You know, maybe we picture Jesus with a headband and a daisy, you know, proclaiming free love, you know. Hey, yeah, I know it's the law, but forget about it. This is the age of Aquarius. But hold on there, Sparky. Okay, I think that if you take a closer look, that is not the case at all. So let's begin with the law, which is what they're talking about. What's the original intent of the law? The law was designed to keep us from sin, right? And sin, by the way, is anything that is defined to be outside of the will of the Father. You know, my bishop one time took me to Rome. It was great. I mean, it was a really long flight, and there was this lady in front of me that decided she was going to recline the whole way, just jamming my legs, but you know how that goes. Anyway, I go over there, and we went to the Sistine Chapel, which is a lot smaller than you would think. And I remember the guards the whole time were like, oh, shh, 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 you know, anyway. You look up, and it's amazing. This masterpiece, this fresco we all know, painted by the great artist Michelangelo. But you know, when you look up at that mural, you realize that much of those strokes, in fact, the majority of those strokes, were not painted by the hand of the master himself, because he had help. Like most great painters, he had assistant painters in that masterpiece. But let me tell you, they painted exactly what Michelangelo wanted them to paint, right? Because he had a sketch. I can assure you that not one of those painters were up there, you know, freelancing, okay, ad-libbing, as they say, painting what they themselves wanted to paint. You know, I got a couple of brothers, and they got kids, and they love their kids. Crazy about them babies, right? Now, what if they were to allow their children to run free, carpe diem, seize the day, you know, live and let live, all that? Go ahead, ride your bicycle in the street. You got as much right to be out there as anybody else. And this whole brushing your teeth thing, well, forget about it. And what a drag that is. And by the way, you don't really have to listen to your mother or father. You can just kind of do what feels right, you know? How do you think that's going to work out? I mean, I'm not a parent, okay, but I can see a lot of pain and suffering there, okay? And my brothers, well, they love their kids, so they protect them with rules. And they're designed to keep them from evil and to survive this fallen world. You as parents know what I'm talking about. Never talk to strangers, no matter how nice they appear. Never get into a stranger's car. I mean, the world's a dangerous place, and kids need rules, right? Well, God created this masterpiece we call the universe, and he has invited you and I, with our free will, to participate in his masterpiece. And in doing so, God has given us the rules to survive in this world. And now, we can't get into it all today, but remember the tree of the knowledge between good and evil? You know the story, right? We were given a choice. We chose poorly. God handed us a paintbrush, yet we have chosen to paint on our own. Now, speaking about my brother, he told me the other day, and I don't even know if this is necessarily true, okay, but he did say that if you bite into an apple and there's a worm inside, which that's never happened to me, but if you do, you'll find that there's no hole where the worm climbed in, right? Because the worm came from within the apple. And I'm thinking, well, how's that possible? Kind of reminds me of that old ship in a bottle. You know, how did it get in there? And I still haven't really figured out that ship in a bottle thing. But anyway, how'd the worm get in there? Well, what he says, okay, my brother, he tells me that the insect laid an egg in the flower before it even became an apple, right? So it is with our fallen nature. It's embryonic. We're born with it. But you know what else is there? The spirit of truth. We're born with both. Now, let me ask you, parents out there, okay, do you remember your child's first lie? You know, the man came through the window, broke the toy, and then ran away. Okay, you remember that first lie? Do you remember that moment where you thought to yourself, where does this child get this? I mean, how can you even come up with it? It kind of reminds me of Baby Ava. You know, you're not the boss of me. Where do you get that? You're not the boss of me, right? It's the same reason why sitting down two toddlers to play with one toy rarely ends well, okay? Mine, mine, mine. Where's the spirit and truth of that, right? Where? Is it not the case that in just about any given situation, we intuitively know the difference between what is right and what is wrong? We always have. Now, we might not know why, but we know, because the quiet voice will lead us there. I mean, we talk about this quiet voice all the time. But you know, the thing about that quiet voice is that the longer you ignore it, the quieter it gets. And after a while, you hear nothing, and congratulations, you're now spiritually dead, okay? And you are right where Diablo wants you to be. Now, if you ignore that quiet voice long enough, it will completely stop talking to you, right? You have given yourself over to the lie. You have given yourself over to the worm, the father of lies, and you can't hear the truth anymore. So, with all that in mind, let's get back to our gospel. Jesus letting this woman go without any consequences. Is he saying forget the law? Is he saying carpe diem? Is he saying live and let live? Well, let's talk about it. The religious establishment have long ago decided that Jesus is a problem and he has to be dealt with. But he's hard to get to because he's attracting all these crowds. And if they arrest him, well, they're going to have a riot on their hands. So they come up with a plan that would fall into the category of what we call a necessary evil, right? Now, the problem with a necessary evil is that once you assure your consciousness that a little bit of evil is okay, then it begins to look a whole lot more and more necessary and a whole lot less and less evil. This is Daily Living. I'm Father Chapin. You stick around. We'll be right back, and we will continue to talk about this amazing gospel that comes to us here as we celebrate the 5th Sunday of Lent. Hi, this is Father Chapin, host of Daily Living. What a pleasure it is to come into your home each and every week to spread the good news, but it's very expensive. Now, I got good news and bad news. The good news is we got plenty of money. The bad news is still in your pocket. So if you'd like to help the ministry, please send a check to Daily Living at 325 West Main Street, White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, 24986. And together we take the good news to a lost world. Welcome back to Daily Living. Now, just for the break, we were talking about how it seems that this world has gone from a world of absolute truth, black and white, to a world where that doesn't exist. And there's a whole lot of gray out there, if you know what I mean. Now, this produces a term we call necessary evil, right? And today we have the Pharisees, and they've come up with their own necessary evil, and it's a pretty good one, really. They catch a woman who is betrothed in the act of adultery, which, you know, that's pretty milquetoast stuff these days. I mean, they make reality TV shows based on this scenario, but this is the perfect trap. Because according to Deuteronomy, if a man is found sleeping with another man's wife, both the man and the woman who slept with him must die. You must purge evil from Israel. Now, it's a topic for another day, but my guess is God didn't want any of his painters to ad-lib his masterpiece with a little bit of free love. And you know me well enough to know that I'm not a legalistic kind of guy. But you got to admit, if you look at the unwed epidemic, the abortion epidemic, the divorcee epidemic, and I'm not a fan of capital punishment here, but it seems like God had some cause here. It's almost like he knew what he was doing. So anyway, they drag this woman before Jesus. In my mind's eye, she's bloodied, she's beaten, she's disheveled hair, maybe her dress is torn, and she is scared to death. She's been thrown to her knees in front of Jesus. And I can just hear some pharisaical spokesman barking out loud enough for the crowds to hear, "So, Jesus, the law says we kill her." And you say, what? Like I said, it's a pretty good trap. Because if he says break the law, then he's no Messiah, right? But if he says kill her, there's a Roman garrison right there that's going to arrest him for sedition, because no Jew can kill anybody Only Romans get to kill, right? So they have this necessary evil. They've got their sacrificial lamb on her knees, and things are looking pretty good for the home team, right? They're excited. It's looking like it's working out. And I've talked about this whole idea before about a time machine. You know, it just fascinates me. And that whole E=mc² thing about Einstein, maybe it's not out of the question. Now, you can bend time. But if I could go anywhere, wouldn't this be a great moment to go to? I mean, to stand there when Jesus says nothing, gets down on his knees, and with his finger starts writing in the sand. I mean, that's a bit odd. Seems like he's ignoring the question. And I'm thinking that Pharisee's feeling pretty good about right now. You know, oh, I got you, right? The law says we kill her. And you say what? Now, in my mind's eye, I can see the whole crowd kind of closing in a little bit, getting a little closer. I mean, look, what's he doing? What's he writing? I mean, if I was there, I know I'd be trying to lean over to see, right? Maybe he was writing from Deuteronomy as we had spoken and taking note of the fact that it is both the man and the woman. Where's the man, right? Or maybe he's reading another part of Deuteronomy where it says, there must be 2 to 3 witnesses in any capital offense worthy of death. Where are the witnesses? Are these trumped up charges? Or maybe he's writing from Leviticus, do not pervert justice, which seems to be what's going on here because they're certainly not interested in justice. They got their necessary evil going on right here. So Jesus gets down on his knees and begins to write. Now, just in passing, who else is on her knees? I mean, who's the only other person there on their knees? I doubt that she's looking at him right now. She's so full of shame. She's so full of fear. Right now, I bet the only thing she can see is the puddle of her tears beneath her as she sobs uncontrollably. But he's looking at her. He's right there in the middle of her circumstance. Now, the Bible doesn't tell us exactly what he wrote that day, but I got guesses, okay? I'm thinking that there were names, and maybe a couple of them, right? Maybe a name like, say, Sarah, or maybe a name like, say, Martha, right? And that big loudmouth Pharisee looks over his shoulder and reads that name Sarah. Maybe his friend, the other Pharisee, reads that name Martha. Meanwhile, they're looking across the crowd and seeing Sarah and Martha with eyes of knives. How dare you do that to that woman? I'm going to expose you for who you are. And then all of a sudden, that secret isn't such a secret now. All of a sudden, so much for that necessary evil now, huh? Jesus stands up. Let the one among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her. Be number one. Now, I'm figuring he's probably got a few more names in his pocket if he needs it, right? Because you see, Jesus has the Spirit of truth inside of him. And in response, they went away one by one, beginning with the elders. And boy, isn't that true? Seems like the older you get, the less you judge. And then finally, my favorite part, and this is the best, I get a bit weepy here. This is the best part, right? He stands up. He's alone with the woman. He says, woman, where are they? Have no one condemned you. By the way, the Greek there could mean sister, right? And she responds rather meekly, no one, sir. And then watch this, because this is really great, okay? Neither do I condemn you. Go, and from now on, do not sin anymore. There was only one person in that crowd that day that had the right to throw a stone. There was only one person in that crowd that day who had the right to condemn her. Now, the idea that Jesus doesn't condemn sin is ludicrous, because if you read Scripture, he condemns it all the time. That's not what's going on. Jesus is getting down in the dirt, eye to eye with this woman in the middle of her circumstances, and he is saying, look at where your sin has brought you. Stop ignoring the quiet voice. Stop ignoring the Spirit of truth. Look at where listening to the worm has brought you. Such suffering. I'm in the middle of your storm right now. Every bit of the suffering, I'm here. Stop. Stop doing what you're doing. Don't do it anymore. And all that guilt, all that shame, all of that that's going to cripple you for the rest of your life, give it to me. Give it to me. Give it all to me. I don't condemn you. Oh, no. Oh, no. Because I'm going to take that, and I'm going to take it to the cross, and I'm going to destroy every bit of it. My friend, hear me when I say that Jesus does not pardon your sin. No, no, no. He let your sin beat the flesh off his back. He let your guilt and your shame and your fear be nailed through his hands and feet. He let your suffering crown his head with thorns. He let your condemnation pierce his side with a sword. He took it all. He allowed it to fester, rot, and shroud him in a blanket of the consequences of all that sin and drag him into hell where it belongs. Now, does that sound like a man who's pardoning sin? No, that sounds like a man who loves you and I a whole lot more than he loved himself. And when the perfect painter who created this masterpiece we call life rose him from the dead, he left all that sin, all those consequences in hell where they belong. My friends, Jesus is down in the dirt with you right now. He's looking at you eye to eye, face to face, in the middle of your circumstances, and he is saying, look at where all this has brought you. Such suffering. Stop it. Give it to me. That is a quiet voice, my friend, and that is the voice that's going to get you home. You know, every day in this country, somebody does something nice for somebody else. Today, why don't you let that somebody be you? This is Daily Living. I'm Father Chapin. Hope you can come back next week and we'll do it again. Until then, I hope you let God live in your life. And I bless you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.